All right, good morning, fellow tech junkies. Aaron Rath here from AJR Aerial, and I wanted to jump on here on this cold Sunday here in northern Colorado. When I woke up this morning, it was minus 11 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is cold. So I thought I would spend some time when I couldn't be outside flying to talk about some drone stuff. Now, I'm not going to break out and talk about why you should get this drone over that drone. There are a ton of videos out there, and I want to talk to those that in 2025, they want to break into the drone hobby. They want to buy a drone and start flying it. So in today's video, I'm going to break down my top 5 questions that you need to answer before you go and get into the drone community. Because there are a lot of things that people just don't think about before they bust into the drone community. I'm going to keep this video shorter, but just know that please do your research before you go out and spend a lot of money on a drone. Before we dive into today's top 5, I just want to say thanks for watching my videos. For those that have stuck around in my rebrand, I truly appreciate it. And I know that we're going to gain all kinds of new members during this rebrand. But before we get into that top 5, make sure you click down below, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, drop a comment. If you're already a drone pilot and I missed something in my 5 questions to ask, throw those questions down below so that we can help educate people, and people are being smart when they're buying their drones and they're not doing things illegally to give drone pilots a bad name. So with that, let's get into our top 5. First question I want to ask you in 2025 as to buying a drone is why? Why do you want a drone? And that's not a broad question. It can be a very broad question. If your answer is just because I want to try something different or try some different photo or video type stuff, then pay attention to the rest of the questions in this video and some of the research that I've done. I've been flying drones. I was thinking about it just a little bit ago. I think I bought my first camera drone about 12 years ago. So in 2013, I bought a Parrot. It's a drone. I think I have it around here somewhere. Let me see. Yep. So this was my first drone, the Parrot. It was a 3-axis image stabilization. You can see the whole thing rocks back and forth to stabilize it. It's stabilized underneath. It's not a stabilized gimbal like we're used to seeing. And this one looks like it's in really good shape because I never crashed it. But crashing is inevitable. So let me set this one aside and let's talk about the why. Why do you want to buy a drone and fly it? If it's because you want to, you're a photographer or someone who does weddings or someone who loves nature photos, that's awesome. You need to pay attention to the rest of this video then. If you're looking to just create a hobby, that's neat, but just know that this hobby can be very expensive, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But if your response is, I just want to try something and see if I like it, then this might not be for you, not at least buying a drone. What I would suggest in that situation is find a friend or a neighbor or someone that has a drone and go ask them questions as to all the flying, what do they fly it for? Why do they buy it? How much did it cost? How much does it cost to maintain? That's a big factor in purchasing your first drone. If you're buying this for your kid's 12-year-old kid, son that wants to learn to fly a drone, I would be very careful because a lot of those drones that you're going to buy for them are going to be what a lot of us would call a throwaway drone, because it's either going to run away, or I should say fly away, or crash or something, and it's going to cost you money to replace or repair. So keep that in mind. So that's number one. I really want you to think about, though, why do I want to get a drone? Why do I want to immerse myself in this hobby? It can be expensive. All right, so with that, why, let's go to question number two. And question number two, I kind of put these in an order originally, but now I'm changing my order because I think question number two needs to be answered before we move on to anything else. And question number two is, what kind of flying do you want to do? Are you looking to take photos and videos from above? Do you want to just have an aerial camera? Or are you looking to do the FPV flying? Because if that's the case, there are a ton of options out there. Let's just take a quick gander over there at my wall of drones, and they're not all there. But you can see I have both camera drones and first-person view drones. And I think FPV you can probably get into for a decent price, but there are a lot of vendors out there that you can shop and go and get an FPV drone. That's exactly what I did. I've been flying FPV. I started during the pandemic time frame when I had nothing else to do. So the first thing I did based on the videos I watched back then is I went and bought an RC. I bought me the Radio Master, and I learned how to fly on my computer. I downloaded a simulator, and I learned to fly using the real remote on my computer on a simulator. And I think that is a smart way to go. I think you can get this. I haven't even looked lately, honestly. I want to say this is a couple $100, but shop around. This is the Radio Master TX16S. There's a ton of different controllers out there that you can get, but that might be a good way to get into this hobby. If FPV is what you're looking for, buy the remote and download the simulator on your computer and go from there. If your objective is to fly camera drones, there are a ton of them out there, and there are a ton of things to look for. The first thing I look for is the gimbal, and make sure that it is stabilized. You want as many axis stabilized gimbals as you can get. I think 3-axis is probably the norm or the most out there that you want to look at getting. Because if you're going to do this and you're going to take pictures and videos, you want to make sure that you're taking something that at least looks decent and at least looks like you bought a decent drone, right? Like I said, you can go on Amazon and put in camera drone and come up with a bunch of them that cost between $100 and $300, but what are you going to get for that? The best thing to do for me that I do is find a drone that you might like or you might think about getting, and then go on YouTube, this platform right here, type in that drone name and see if there's any reviews on it. You can find a ton of reviews. There are a ton of channels out there that do drone reviews. I'm not one of them. One, I don't have vendors sending me drones to test out. If I did, then I might review them. That's a hint out there. If you want to send me some drones, I'll test them and do some reviews on them. But that kind of breaks out into the what kind of flying do you want to do, right? There's really two paths you can take here. You can take the camera path if you want to do nature shots or you want to do shots like that. But keep in mind, there are a lot of other things that you need to take into account, and we'll get to that here in a couple of my questions. Or you can take the FPV route and just know that there are a lot of other things that you may have to deal with. But I think understanding what type of flying you want to do before you even get into purchasing is very important here. So with that, let's move to the next question. Question number 3 that I have for you. So we've talked about the why. Why do you want to get into it? What kind of flying do you want to get into? I think the third one is probably one of the most important before you go forward, and that is, how much money do you have to spend? What's your budget? I want you to think about what your budget is, because if you're going into the FPV community and your budget is $500, you can probably get a fairly decent first-person view drone. Now, you may be on the mid to lower end, but you're probably going to get something fairly decent that you can fly, especially if you're looking in the micro size. If you're looking in the 5-inch size, it may be a little bit tougher to find something in that range. But if you're looking in a $500 range in the FPV, if you're looking for ready to fly kits, so a ready to fly kit would come with the drone, the goggles, and the controller that you need. You can probably do that and get a fairly decent FPV starter kit for about $500 or less, right? Now, obviously, with any hobby, the more you spend, the better you get. The more quality you get, the more reusable you get, the better resilient it is if you crash it. And oh, by the way, if you're going to get into the FPV community, that initial expense that you have is not the only expense that you're going to have, because there are repairs that you're going to have to do. You are going to crash your drone, your FPV drone, many, many times. I have a box of propellers that I've replaced because you don't pay attention. It doesn't have things like obstacle avoidance. So when you're flying that FPV drone around and you're ripping around and you hit that goalpost head on, you're going to break propellers. You could break motors. You could break arms. There's a ton of things that you're going to break and a ton of things that you're going to have to replace. So if you're going to the FPV budget or if you're going into FPV, then your budget is more than just an initial budget. Now, if you decide that you're going to go into camera drones, you could have just a budget that is just the initial budget and no repairs. Now, that's lucky and far and few between, but it also depends on the type and expense that you put into the drone. So as I said, I've been flying camera drones for a very long time. I do have the DJI Mini 2, and I have the DJI 4 Pro, Mini 4 Pro, excuse me. The DJI Mini 2 has never been crashed, but I'm a very careful pilot. But it does not have obstacle avoidance on it. So if I'm flying and I'm not paying attention and there's a tree there, I'm going to fly into the tree. Therefore, I'm going to have costly expenses. Hopefully, in that case, I paid for the DJI Care and I get it replaced or repaired for free. If not, I have to repair or replace that drone myself, and that can be costly. And in some cases, it can't even be repaired, so the only thing to do is to buy a new one. So, basic bottom line for this is that the budget does not just include the initial purchase. You need to know and understand what kind of money you have to put into this hobby in the future for repairs. And also, when you decide that you really start to like this hobby, you're going to want to buy more drones. This isn't a buy one and I'm done type of thing. If you go to the FPV side, I have a 5-inch, I have a 7-inch, I have Tiny Whoop, I have a Cinewhoop at a 7-inch. Then I decided, you know what, DJI made something, the Avata, and I bought the DJI Avata 2. But you can get the DJI Neo, you can get the DJI Flip now. So there's so many different things that you can buy, and you're not just going to buy one. It's not just going to stop at one. So know that this hobby turns into something that you're going to want to spend a lot of money on. So now we understand the why. We know why you got into this. We understand the what kind of flying you want to do, and then how much money do you have to spend. That's number 3. But I think number 4 and number 5 are super duper important to understand. All right, for number 4, the number 4 question I want to ask you is, do you know and understand the laws? Yes, unfortunately, there are laws and rules that come into play when you decide to buy and fly a drone. First of all, when we go back to number 2, the why you want to fly, the what you want to fly. If you want to do camera drones, if you're going to think that you're just going to get a drone and you're going to go start flying real estate and taking pictures of people's property and selling them, or taking some cool nature shots that nobody else can get from the ground, and you're going to sell those. Well, guess what? You cannot just do that. In order to make money from a drone, you have to have a Part 107 remote pilot's license. And that's not a super easy license to get. There are many places that can help you study to get it. But if you're going to buy and sell, or excuse me, if you're going to create and sell anything using a drone, you have to have that commercial pilot's license. So you need to understand the laws and understand the rules. If you're going to buy it to travel like I do sometimes, excuse me, you need to know and understand the rules and laws of other places. Different countries have different rules. I'm going on a cruise in November to the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. You can't even fly it in Bonaire. They do not even allow it. Aruba and Curacao, you can fly it, but only certain locations and only up to a certain altitude. Within the United States, you can only fly up to 400 feet. And that's not everywhere in the United States. There are restrictions as to where you can fly. There are apps to download to make sure you can fly where you are. So you need to even understand if the city or town that you're going to do the bulk of your flying in, maybe that's where you live, are you even allowed to fly the drone legally? Now, I'm lucky where I live. I can take off right from my driveway and fly my drone, but know that there are places where you cannot do that. And not only that, but to legally fly a drone and just take off like from my driveway and fly out, I have to have visual line of sight. So I or someone that's near me needs to be able to see that drone off in the distance. It might be a small black dot, but you need to be able to see that. So those are just a couple of the laws and rules that you need to understand. You can't just go buy a drone and start flying over crowds in the Christmas market in your local town, or taking some cool shots of a parade as you're flying overhead of the parade. That's illegal. You cannot fly over people unless you have a waiver, and that waiver includes a lot of different things that you have to get, to include probably propeller guards in most cases. So all I'm saying here is, before you decide to get into this hobby and you understand your why, you understand what kind of flying you want to do, you understand the budget that you have, you need to understand the laws and rules that you need to know, right? Because do you know anything about the 250 gram rule, right? Drones don't need to be, excuse me, registered with the FAA if they're less than 250 grams. If they're greater than 250 grams, you have to register them with the FAA. Now, keep in mind that just because you don't have to register your drone does not mean, and I'm going to emphasize this, it does not mean that the rules and laws do not apply to you, because they still apply to you. It's just that your drone doesn't have to be registered. So, with that in mind, I'm going to cut number 4 off, because we could make a whole video on this, and there are a ton of videos out there on this subject. But for number 4, know and understand the laws. So now let's get to the last one. Let's get to number 5. All right, number 5 is just a simple question for you. Do you really have the time to put forward into this hobby? It takes a lot of time, especially if you decide, back at question number 2, your answer was that you want to go the FPV route. FPV flying is not something that you just put the goggles on and you're like, all right, I'm an FPV pilot. Because guess what? It takes a ton of time, 1, to learn how to fly, 2, how to fix and repair your quad that you're flying, because guess what? You are going to crash. So you need to learn how to do repairs. Do you know how to do soldering? Do you know how to use a screwdriver and take propellers off? There's so many different things that you need to know and understand. But do you have the time to put forward into this hobby? Now, if your answer back at question number 2 was, I just want to take pictures and videos of cool places that I can't take from the ground, then your answer for this question is probably going to be irrelevant, right? Because if you're already going somewhere to take pictures and videos, taking your drone, understanding the laws where you're going is just a simple step to take. So, you know, you're probably going to have the time. But anybody else, I just want to ask you, before you go out and spend $1,500 on a DJI Mini 4 and get the new controller, the RC3, before you get all of that stuff, do you have the time to do that? If you're going to spend that kind of money on a drone, you do not want to have that something that you use once every 7 to 10 months or once a year. You want to use that and get your money's worth out of it because you spent a big investment on that. You want to get your money back, but you also have to keep in mind that you can't sell anything unless you get that Part 107. So with that in mind, do you have the time? With all that being said, I just want to thank everybody for watching all the way through this video. Please make sure that you drop down below and hit that subscribe button. It helps us in the long run. Click the like button because, you know, that helps as well. It moves us around in the algorithm. Our videos show up more, and that only helps drive other items. But I want to thank everybody for watching today's video. I know it could have been long, or it could have been longer, I should say, but I know this might be long video, but thanks for watching all the way through because this is important things to think about before you go out and make a big purchase on a drone. There are so many videos out there. All I ask you is that you educate yourself before you go spend money and before you start flying illegally. I mean, we'll just use a quick example from recent history on illegal flying, right? And that's the drone that collided with the water plane as the planes were trying to fight the fires in Los Angeles. That's an illegal place to fly. It was an NFR, a no flying restricted zone, and you can't fly there. But someone was flying there, they hit a plane, that plane had to come out of commission. That could have had huge, huge repercussions if that plane had crashed. But just know everything that I covered today is important to know and understand. Do your due diligence, do your research, check things out. And as always, that person behind you, that person in front of you, you don't know what they're going through, so just be kind. It's the easiest thing to do. And with that, if you decide to get a drone, get out, go fly. It's a lot of fun, and we'll talk to you in the next video.